actually can turn it around and do
Oh, she's so
flip it,
sweet.
right? Then you can.
Right, because then this blocks the
She is
light,
so-
right?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I'm
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
you know.
She is.
Wait, does this flip so that you don't?
Yeah, and I didn't know
No, no, no,
Andrea,
yeah,
I
like
hadn't
that.
met Andrea, so I didn't know
And
anything.
then, but that'll flip around, right?
Yeah, but
But it was
I just whatever. Well, no, just because this is a light, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that kind of doesn't.
Are they coming here in person? I thought he said he was.
And it blocks.
Right,
Okay.
I saw them this morning, it was
That
beautiful.
one too. So no, I don't. No. Oh, it's already going. Okay, hello, people watching. We're just setting up the camera. Forgive us for the noise and discombobulation. Okay.
I'm really busy.
Is that what you're getting?
Go.
Really busy.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, you think it seems less busy than it normally is.
I'm sorry?
Doesn't it seem a little less busy than?
The park cycle lot wasn't full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's the weather or the Canadian smoke.
I think it's a little bit both.
Mm-hmm. Well, look at all these cameras, I'm like, lights, camera, action, people, you know, wow.
Yeah, I'm on my third device here. We're gonna give this one. This one the camera won't recognize. And my phone suddenly wants a 4-digit passcode that I have never set
Oh,
up.
good lord.
And now I'm not connected to the internet.
Slowly, slowly.
Now we are.
Right, Anthony? Anthony's here till Tuesday, Jim.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we'll be in touch with you. I think, Monday, we're gonna do, I believe, one tour, but, I wanna hike out from the Virginia Monument up to, oh, yeah, I've gotta do that. I wanna get out there and do that.
Hey, tick spray. Lots of tick spray.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I'm doing the evening, they're doing
I'm almost defensive to
tonight and
myself.
tomorrow. I'm going on the
So much. I like
7:30 or
supernatural stuff. I hate
7:45
the deep
cemetery
every day. I just hate it,
at
but I know
Twilight.
it works.
Are you?
Yeah,
Oh,
that'll be neat.
wow, okay.
Both days at 7, I think it's all weekend.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's.
okay.
it's fun.
There's
And
like
this year is
so
really
much
hot,
stuff,
kids
you don't
come
know
out
what,
there.
it's like you're overwhelmed.
If you want to get up early,
You know?
we're going to, tomorrow morning, what, 9:30?
Yeah, we're going to Lee's headquarters, they're doing, a Cody from the Seminary Ridge
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Museum.
Great guy.
Oh, we met him, yesterday.
We were
briefly.
there last night this is their
Seminary.
10th anniversary. And they had a big dinner last night in honor of their 10th anniversary of the Seminary Ridge Museum.
He was amazing, I couldn't stop talking
Yeah, they're good.
when I got in there, but he did say, 9:30 on
Yeah,
Sunday.
I told him.
He's doing a full tour, and we're gonna do that tomorrow before
What's going on?
we come here.
Yeah, we know Pete real well, and he did our roundtable event Thursday night.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, and he said, I'm gonna have five straight days of touring. He said, I hope my voice holds out.
Yeah, he was terrific, that was a lot of fun, so just to meet him and to be inside the actual,
Yeah,
I'd never been in, because every time we come to Gettysburg, it was
Add that to my
closed.
ever
So I was
growing
running
list of
around that place and
what I'm
asking
doing,
him
yeah.
questions, and it was a lot of fun, yeah.
yeah.
Police headquarters,
They
I
had the-
love
they had
that
the
place.
dining hall across the street. That was,
Did they?
yeah, it was great.
Excellent, excellent.
And
I love it.
Brian Matthew Jordan
Who is
did
that?
the speech. He's a Gettysburg College graduate, a Yalie,
Oh, wow.
who I guess he got his PhD at Yale, and is professor of history at Sam Houston State in Texas,
Wow.
Huntsville, Texas.
Wow.
And he's a really fine writer,
Wow.
and has written 3 or 4 books already. He's really young.
God
it's
bless
scary.
him. I love that, because God bless him.
But
It's,
he's,
you know.
he was the keynote speaker based upon the book he's writing now.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's
Wow.
really, really fun.
Yeah,
Compare,
this is-
I was a history teacher forever, and I always tried to connect what happened in the past to what's happening in the future, or in the present, as much as I could do. And basically, that's what he did last night. Draw some parallels
Wonderful, wonderful.
between Civil War America and 21st century America. It was very well done.
It's a little scary when you think about polarization. So. Very much so,
Yeah.
very much so. But, I'm excited. I'm just excited to be here. And you know, I don't worry about numbers or who comes or what. I'm just
Most of
thrilled.
our people get it.
Yeah,
because-
and I'm just thrilled who's here is here and who's ever is coming. I'm just so grateful that, you know, you can't, you know, I don't have a crystal ball. I mean, I'm just
And there's so
grateful.
much going on everywhere, but somebody said, well, why would you even do it? I'm like, because we've owned this for many years,
Yeah.
and we're gonna keep doing it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I actually started book talks
Oh,
20 years ago.
did you?
When Greystone American History Store years ago
Mm.
stopped doing them,
Oh, wow.
I went to our president at the Friends of the National Forest at Gettysburg and I said, I think we should do it. And she was like, okay, so the Sacred Trust name,
Yeah?
that was me. And I was really glad they brought it back, because that was like, to see what that's grown into.
Wow.
We grew that over years at the Friends and then at the
That's something.
foundation,
Wow.
and I'm happy to continue them here, you know. So we're gonna expand, we have plans to expand this for next year.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
I'll be back.
I ran into Tommy McMillan the other day.
Oh, he's terrific.
I know him well,
My
and
client and best friend.
He's
he
awesome.
said if you get a chance to go to Lisa, you should do it.
Yeah,
I said I plan to
Did
anyway.
he really? Oh my God.
he's a great champion. When he sees somebody that like, he thinks is legit and knows what they're doing. he's
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I
He
find
knows
it
my
about it.
husband from some old public relations sport days. My husband he works for ESPN right now, but previously he was in PR for the Boston Red Sox. And I don't know if I'm speaking perfectly, but Jim, did you cross paths with Tom, or did you know of Tom when he was with the Penguins? Different kind of eras, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So they connected when we visited here in February, and they went, oh, they were like this talking. I couldn't get anything in between them. Like guys. So tell him I said thank you very much. That was
I
very
will.
kind of him.
I will.
Thank you.
I'm getting there.
She's still sitting there. Stuff.
No, I'm just trying to find your bio.
Oh, okay.
Good, and I'm trying to figure out.
You know what? I have a new website.
Okay. Well, she sent me all the stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're all good. We
Yeah,
got it.
I just updated a whole bunch of stuff on it. So just recently,
All right, what's your website?
lisasamia.com.
It's
samia.com, and once you pull that up, you'll see a tab that says About Me. Yeah, all updated.
That's good.
As of 2 days ago, guys.
I won't read the whole thing.
No, it's a lot, just the,
I am now looking for, trying to reverse my camera.
thank you everybody for your patience. Too.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it, everyone.
It's our first time trying to do this, so we're.
You know the perils of live streaming.
I do.
Yes.
And it's annoying.
We all have these issues. You know, it's too bad, Anthony, that when I was in Manassas, we couldn't have arranged that, huh?
Yeah, Anthony.
Oh, was that you? No. Who was responsible? Who was it? You don't have anyone.
Not right now, no.
Just know, Lisa, that is live right now.
Oh, how do I look? I hope not.
I'll tell you. Oh, you look great.
I'm live, I just went live, yeah, we're good.
Okay, good. We went really live.
Yeah.
That whole time I was talking.
Why'd you say
Nobody's
something
watching, so you're fine.
You're gonna cut that out.
horrible? I can do it later. Yeah, why'd you say something horrible?
No, not that.
Oh.
I just need to know when I'm on or off. That's all.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you heard me say it.
No. Oh my God.
Okay.
I'm sure you're okay.
Let me put my glasses here.
I think we're good. We'll see how this goes. If we find this live things that go along.
You want me to move off to the side?
No, stay
Oh,
right there.
stay
And,
here. Oh,
and I
okay.
don't need the mic or anything, I'll just.
Okay, I'll wait until my mic.
yell. I'll just yell really loud. Okay, welcome everybody, and since we are putting these on Facebook Live, welcome everybody who will watch us now live. or in the future, because once these videos are there, they will live forever, no pressure. But my name is Drew. I'm the president of the Gettysburg Heritage Center and the Gettysburg Nature Alliance. And we have a long history here of doing book talks and author signings. Actually, we specialize in doing those year-round. So we know there's a lot of other exciting things going on in town, but we felt it was important that we continue with this and continue that kind of brand with Bill as offering a great opportunity to meet authors, mingle with them in a more private setting, and to hear some really great book talks. So I am really happy to introduce our first speaker to kick off our anniversary book talks today, Lisa Samia, right?
Samia.
Okay, got it right. I was worried I'm gonna say her name wrong. She's an award-winning poet and author. Researches, writes, and lectures on American Civil War history, so very appropriate for July 1st, 160 years after the first shots of the battle. Her latest accomplishments are being selected as the National Parks Arts Foundation's Artist in Residence for Gettysburg National Military Park in 2020, which is a huge honor. That is, they get applicants from all over the country for that, so that's a really big deal. And the National Park Service's Artist in Residence for Manassas National Battlefield in 2021, both for her poetry. That is an absolutely phenomenal honor. Congratulations. She has a bunch of works, including the Nameless and Faceless of the Civil War. That's a collection of 28 poems and 28 essays on historical representations of Civil War events, and highly recommend checking that out. Lots of other publications. I won't read her whole bio, it's like 6 paragraphs long, and I want to give her time to talk. She's an avid author, and she's a speaker on John Wilkes Booth and his sister, Asia Booth Clark, which I personally would love to hear about, because I don't know much about that. That's fascinating. She's appeared multiple times at Tudor Hall, Bel Air, Maryland, where the Booth family home. That's exciting too. Wow, cool. Her recent discovery of a set of archived letters written by Asia Booth Clark while residing in Europe provides a deeper reveal of Asia Booth Clark, and also a future biography of Asia Booth Clark, her life and her letters is Lisa's next project. Well, you'll be speaking here on that as soon as that's finished. And she has lectured at all kinds of places, including the Edgar Allan Poe House and Museum, the Dr. Samuel A. Mudd House and Museum, the Civil War Roundtable Congress, American Civil War Museum, right here at the Heritage Center, the Southern Maryland Civil War Roundtable, and a lot of Barnes & Noble locations, which are my motherships and home ships. So it's my honor to welcome Lisa, and we're thrilled that you're here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, glasses, and let me get my microphone on. Can everybody hear me? My mic? Yes? Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. The Nameless and the Faceless of the Civil War, Gettysburg, Manassas, and more. The Nameless and Faceless of the Civil War, Gettysburg, Manassas, and more is the third book in the Nameless and the Faceless series. The prior 2 books are the Nameless and Faceless of the Civil War and Nameless and Faceless Women of the Civil War. Both books, as you heard a little bit earlier, earned me Artist in Residency for Gettysburg for poetry and for Manassas for poetry as well. These books are a collection of 28 poems and historical essays on the Civil War, and the premise of all of these books is that we know that not everyone who witnessed and experienced the Civil War made it into the history books. So what of all the unknowns? By combining the rhyme and the narrative of poetry with Civil War history, a lost voice of the past comes forth to share their experiences and their sufferings. A place where the humanity of history and the songs of the soul come together to create a deeper empathy for those lost and unknown. The lines of North and South are blurred in these collections. There are no border states here, no governance of politics, for it is my belief that suffering has no boundaries. The narrator in most of these poems is recounting a historical scene of the Civil War, of course. Represented are soldiers, nurses, doctors, all who experienced the vast pain and misery of the war. And in some instances, the narrator in the poem is identified. This was done to bring awareness to some lesser knowns, and in some instances, well-known individuals of the Civil War. You will see that here in this presentation. And these poems give a place to tell their stories of compassion, life, death, and grief, as a reminder to all of the world that they did not die in vain. Before I begin, I just want to share a personal journey
story with you. I'll be very brief. At the end of June of 2013, my husband Jim took me on a trip to Washington, D.C. This trip was to celebrate the conclusion of my treatments due to a health issue. We went to Manassas National Battlefield Park, which was my first time seeing that battlefield. And we noticed during our time in D.C., the advertising for Gettysburg was for the commemorating the 150th anniversary of that battle. Well, we were only able to make it here for one day, and that was on June 29th. We saw all the reenactors in town and a reenactment in the Peach Orchard. I will never, ever forget that trip. Fast forward now to June and July of 2023, which finds me here in Gettysburg to be a part of the 160th commemoration of this battle. I'm overwhelmed with humility and grateful beyond all measure for the second chance that I have been given. With that second chance, therefore, I decided to use it to give a voice to those who died without a name or a face, and give them a chance, like I've had, to live again. The first poem today is called My Brother Jacob. This is the story of two unknown Confederate brothers from Virginia who joined the Confederacy together at the start of the war, but only one would survive the Battle of Gettysburg. The inspiration for the poem is from two brothers who fought for the Confederacy, one named Colonel William C. Oates and his brother John A. Oates of the 15th Alabama. Both brothers would find themselves fighting at Little Round Top on July 2nd in Gettysburg. Only one of these brothers would survive. My brother Jacob. I will tell you a story right here and now of my brother Jacob, I do avow. You see, it was the spring of '61 when first we knew secession had rung, and my younger brother Jacob, you see, sprang to enlist to defend Virginia if ever be. I will never forget his fervor and such that asked me to join him. It was too much. For you see, it was me and him and my ma at home. My pa done died, it was just us alone. My poor ma, she took me aside, and she told me with all of her pride, see here, Caleb, as the oldest of my sons, I don't want you to go either. God's will, thy will be done. But go you must, but for the reason I give. Watch out for your brother and help him live. For 'tis you we have always relied, and this too I'm afraid we must abide. Not to worry about me, my son, she said with a smile. I'll be waiting for you both. I'll be here a while. And so you must go, you must defend our little farm here to the very end. With that said, Jacob and I took our leave. The last sight of my ma caused me to grieve. And in the battles that we stayed true, Manassas, Antietam, Fredericksburg, to name a few, Jacob and I, well, we stayed together every time. Shoulder to shoulder it would us find. After 2 years' times in the battles that bled, comrades killed so much bloodshed, that Jacob and I did survive, you see, but it would be Gettysburg that would consume me. It was day 3 on this impossibly hot day. I was with Jacob in the tree line with all of Virginia, I say, waiting for our commander, General Pickett, to order us men into the battle and out into the glen, to march in the open field about a mile or so, they say, to face the Union artillery along the way. I turned to Jacob as we waited to go and told him, stay close, brother, for I know this day's battle, I believe, will bring much sorrow, I fear, for all of us men and our loved ones' tears. Jacob smiled at me with his usual grin, said, come on, brother, we will win. And then the silence was sliced with the battle din and roar, as General Pickett did state it was for. Remember, men, you are from old Virginia, I heard him say, and so the drums of battle ordered us on our way. Not a sound from the ranks was heard, only the beating drums that was stirred. And so we marched, Jacob right by my side. I wanted to grab him, to run and to hide.
For in that moment, great explosions were all around. The Union cannon was the most deafening sound, and great groans and cries from the men as one by one they disappeared from the glen. And yet we kept marching, kept going, you see, to the copse of trees where the Union may be. Then it seemed all my life stopped in this place, a great blast near me, hot to my face. I must tell you, I do not remember what happened then. I woke up and lay there for what or how long or when. I realized as I raised my head the battle was over. So many dead in fields of sweet clover. I carefully inspected myself to be sure I was all right, only knocked out in this horrific fight. I rose to my feet and panic struck my heart. Where was Jacob I could not part? It was then I spied him, very near a group of the dead. I went to roust him and move away from the hotbed. I knelt beside him, knocked out like me. I cried, Jacob, come on, follow me. Wake up, wake up. It's time to go. We will fight another battle, this I do know. I do not know how long I tried to revive my brother on that field. Only when the ambulance came and told me to yield. My brother's body to be buried post-haste. No time to mourn, no time to waste. My blood froze even through the blazing heat. My brother's body at my feet. There would be no going home, not for him. I cried in the haze and the din, and thought of my ma and the promise I could not keep. I tried, Ma, to keep him safe, I said and did weep. But God Almighty had other plans for him. This we prayed not to see. For your sweet boy Jacob, Ma, he was not meant to be. Brothers Colonel William C. Oates and Lieutenant John A. Oates, CSA, 15th Alabama. The inspiration from this poem, My Brother Jacob, is born from what many families may have experienced during the Civil War, of course, and this instance, an unknown pair of brothers fighting alongside one another who started out in Manassas and ended up on the fields of Gettysburg. But it's on this field of Gettysburg where one lived and died, and how many countless others, brothers, met that fate. How many died unknown, without a name or a face, or even a trace. And yet this is the one particular story of these two brothers who fought for the 15th Alabama. The 15th Alabama were heavily engaged during the Battle of Little Round Top on July 2nd, and defending the Union left was Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain in his 20th of Maine. Also present was Thomas Chamberlain, who was Colonel Chamberlain's younger brother. Both of these Chamberlain brothers would survive the battle. Colonel Oates would survive the battle, but his younger brother John would die. William's grief at the loss of his brother John is haunting even to this day. He says, no brothers loved each other better, William wrote of John long after the battle. He could feel nothing but sad over his fate, he wrote, adding, had he been killed outright, it would have been so sad. But he fell into the hands of the enemy, and he died a prisoner of war. I've stood at the base of Little Round Top, as I'm sure all of you have, and stood at the summit. It's an extraordinary feeling to stand there, where we know one brother lived and one brother died, and two brothers survived. And to remember it is where one brother, Colonel William C. Oates, would have to leave his brother on that battlefield and be given to death at Gettysburg. Next poem is called The Basement. In this poem, we hear from an unknown Confederate soldier who's dying in the basement of the Lutheran seminary after the Battle of Gettysburg. The dying soldier in his last moment sees the basement door open and raises his hand to bring attention to his plight. And the woman that he sees, and the inspiration for the poem, is Sarah Broadhead. The basement. It was so frightfully hot in those early July days. Gettysburg was the name. Oh, the fighting raged. The fife, the drum, the cannon roar, marching in fours in our corps. The sound of fire, the battle din, our color bearer, our day to win. The artillery that I did see and feel, that bended my knee and made me kneel. Yet I prayed, where are you, God on high? The creator, the one of love, so how I cried. I fired my musket and I stood my ground. I had no choice with those people all around. For although I defended my home, my wife, my children there in all of my life, I tried to take cover, you see. Up by the seminary it was to be. But the mini ball that struck me down leveled me right to the ground. I fell and all I could see, the soldiers fighting all around me. Then it became quiet from the fire, and the sound of the wounded, it was so dire. I could not speak, I could barely breathe. I crawled to find cover anywhere you see. A day or two went by, I'm not sure, and I found myself on a basement floor. But I was not alone, I barely had room for the pile of soldiers and all of this gloom. The moans and the bloodshed that echoed within became even louder as the rains began. And soon our haven filled, those souls you see began to drown in the filth and the debris. My breath was fading, my wounds too great, when the basement door opened and I saw her face. With my last ounce of strength, I reached out my arm. I cried, help me, take me from harm. There were so many of us in that basement, you see, too many wounded with no one to plead. Then the pain that had drained the life from me began to ebb and set me free. The woman came towards me, yet I began to fade from her sight. I was leaving this place to the Almighty's might. There were no more sounds of cries and such. The white light came for me and I felt his touch. And as I began to ascend from this death place, my comrades were with me, blessed by his grace. Sarah Broadhead, Diary of a Lady of Gettysburg, June 15th to July 15th, 1863. We know about the casualties here at Gettysburg after the battle, approximately 51,000. We know about the flanking maneuvers and the attacks and the retreats and the numbers, but those are military numbers, military stories. This is the perspective of a woman who actually experienced that time in Gettysburg. This is a story of Sarah Broadhead, who was a resident of Gettysburg. She's the inspiration for the basement. And she would write of her experiences during that time. And it was an entry on July 8, 1863, that was so extraordinary that while she was working and tending to the wounded at the Lutheran Seminary that had been converted into a hospital, she opened the door to the basement and described as such, quote, I found I had only seen the lighter cases, and worse horrors met my eyes on descending to the basement of that building. Men wounded in 3 and 4 cases, not able to help themselves in the least bit, lay almost swimming in water. She found a lady to come and help her, and they said, my God, they must be gotten out of this or they will drown. And Sarah Broadhead and other women of Gettysburg worked some 100 soldiers to lift them out of that basement. I have visited the Seminary Ridge Museum, and it was actually while I was there on an exhibit of Sarah Broadhead. And there's like a painting of what the soldiers may have looked like in that basement, and it looks like they're laying like cordwood. And I saw that, and that was the inspiration for this poem and what she did. I could not believe what I was seeing. And it is to wonder of all those unknowns in that basement, like this Confederate soldier lost to history with no name and no face, and yet now with a voice to tell of his story from the despair and the agony during and after the Battle of Gettysburg, and the incredible courage and compassion shown by an ordinary citizen and many like her, a citizen whose name was Sarah Broadhead. What was her name? This is the story of young Tilly Pierce and her actions while tending the wounded soldiers during the battle, and her encounter with Union General Stephen Weed, who would fall to his injuries suffered on July 2nd, 1863 at Little Round Top. What was her name? July 2nd, 1863, at Little Round Top is where you will find me. I was there in command and to defend that piece of ground until the end. I am Brigadier General Stephen Weed, from Staten Island, New York, 'tis bittersweet. And on that most terrifying day, when the rebels stormed up into the fray, my men of the 3rd Brigade, 2nd Division, and 5th Corps of the Army of the Potomac in this Civil War fought the onslaught of the rebel fire. Alabama and Texas, it was so dire. I was with Lieutenant Charles Hazlitt, you see, of Battery D, 5th U.S. Artillery, I do decree, and watched as he was struck down with mortal fire. Died by his battery, it was hellfire. And then a blink of an eye, I felt the lifeblood ebb from me. It was my time, you see. I was paralyzed, and as I was removed from the field to a farmhouse of the Union, wounded where our men would yield. It was called White Hart Farm, I heard in my malaise, as I lay in the room in the basement haze. I knew I would not last, this was my fate. Then a young girl came into the room I could see, and held a candle and sat by me. She talked with me until my brethren returned, and promised she would visit me, of this I did learn. So dear and kind was this child's face, I asked her name before God's impending grace. My brethren said Tilly Pierce was her name. She was tending the Union, he did exclaim. She said she would return at first morning light, but I knew God had other plans for me. I was in his sight. And as I ascended to the throne, I saw the young girl who was known. Tilly Pierce, I said her name, whose kindness to me would forever refrain. Tilly Pierce and General Stephen Weed. Matilda Pierce was born 1848 in Gettysburg. She was just 15 years old when the Battle of Gettysburg was fought. She watched the Union Army march through town, and at the urging of her family, Tilly and some of her friends left the town and went to what they thought was a safe haven, the Jacob Weikhart's farmhouse, which was located at the base of Little Round Top, so that wasn't too good. During the battle, Tilly provided water and food to the soldiers and assisted the surgeons and the nurses in caring for the wounded. 25 years later, she wrote a book about her experiences during that time at Gettysburg, or what a girl saw and heard of the battle. Quote, one soldier sitting near the doorway that led into a little room in the southeast corner of the basement beckoned me to him. He was holding a lighted candle in his hand and was watching over a wounded soldier who was lying upon the floor. He asked me if I would get him a piece of bread, saying he was hungry. I said certainly, and ran away in return. I gave him the bread, and he seemed very thankful. He then asked me if I would hold the light and stay with the wounded man until he came back. I said I would gladly do so, and that I wanted to do something for the poor soldiers, if I only knew what. Then she said that she would return the next day. And she says, I hastened down to the little basement room. As I entered, the soldier lay there, dead. His faithful attendant was still at his side. I had kept my promise, but he was not there to greet me. As I stood there gazing in sadness at the prostrate form, the attendant looked up at me and asked, do you know who this is? I replied, no, sir. He said, this is the body of General Weed, a New York man. Imagine just being 15 years old and facing the bloodiest battle ever to take place on U.S. soil. And this is what happened to Tilly Pierce. And how brave these women were during that time and what they did. No training, but with enormous courage and compassion, Tilly and other Gettysburg citizens helped save the lives of so many soldiers. She's only a kid, only 15 years old. the Summer Kitchen, and the George Spangler Farm. Gettysburg, July 5th, 1863. In this poem, we're actually going to hear from the voice of Confederate Brigadier General Lewis A. Armistead. General Armistead was mortally wounded on July 3rd, 1863, after a failed assault on the Union line as part of Confederate General George Pickett and Pickett's charge. His story is the story of the last day of that battle and his wounding, only to die on July 5th, 1863. The Summer Kitchen. July 3rd, 1863 was the date that the mini ball struck me. I had my division line up on Seminary Ridge to begin to make the march to the battle din. Our artillery did bombard the Union, you see, up yonder away to the copse of trees. And when that barrage has ceased its last fire, our General George Pickett did lead us into the mire, and with the resolve to march that mile across, to assault the Union at all cost, I stood there and prayed to our God above that my spirit was his to command and love. And so we marched across that field to the Union line that would not yield, and we kept marching throughout, the Union artillery that did rout our brave line of Virginians that did seek that Union position. We were not meek, but our line began to falter hither and fro as artillery fire it did throw through our line of men that did mangle, yet we forged through to that angle. We did not break or panic, you see, until the fence on the Emmitsburg Road it was known to be. And as we climbed and tossed over that fence, the Union artillery fire commenced. So many disappeared as we moved through, our brave soldiers in butternut. Oh, we knew that this charge we would not give up until we reached the stone wall where the Union struck. And so we marched through canister, shot, and shell. As I watched man after man that fell, we stalled for just a moment to regroup, you see, long enough to call to my men if ever be. I took my hat and pierced it with my sword to lead my men as I roared. I shouted, give them the cold steel, and kept to the front to assault the Union at the angle we did affront, and breached that stone wall and tried to turn the cannon around to return. Fire upon them, yet we could not sustain the assault at the wall. I yet refrained. I was hit and I fell to the ground. I was wounded like so many around, and spied from in my most grievous pain the retreat from the stone wall. We could not remain. I know not how long I did lay there, I state. The ambulance came to me, the field post haste. I was brought to a field hospital, you see. My wounds were mortal so as to be. I was moved to the Summer Kitchen at the Spangler Farm, where I lay to die far from harm. Do not warn me, do not weep, for we all must die, and ne'er to keep. But my time was hastened by the mini ball, you see. But I was just another casualty on July 3rd, 1863. The George Spangler Farm and Confederate Brigadier General Lewis A. Armistead, July 5th, 1863. The Spangler's separate summer kitchen building and small house were reserved for high priority patients. Confederate Brigadier General Lewis A. Armistead died in the summer kitchen on July 5th, 2 days after he was mortally wounded while leading his men across that wall at the end of Pickett's charge. I have walked that open field, maybe even in the footsteps of General Armistead, to the Union position at the angle, and stood at the spot where General Armistead fell on July 3rd. I then traced his steps to the George Spangler Farm. Then my journey took me to this summer kitchen that became the very inspiration for the poem, The Summer Kitchen. This brick and mortar structure with its large interior fireplace is one of the Civil War's stone sentinels. For within its walls is the story of the death of Confederate Brigadier General Lewis Armistead. While history recounts the events of the Spangler Farm, its occupants, the horror of the wounded, of the battle, it's to this one lone structure that we acknowledge here today the loss of this one general. The stone sentinel holds within its walls the lifeblood and death of a general so brave in battle and in death. Upon entering its modest walls, it is truly to be instantly humbled by the event that took place there, July 5th, 1863. The Klingel House. This poem is from my collection, The Nameless and Faceless Women of the Civil War, actually. The Klingel House, I absolutely, whenever I come to Gettysburg, this is the first place I go to. For some reason, it just feels that this is where I need to be when I come to Gettysburg. And it's the story of the Klingel House and the history of what happened there after the battle that inspired me so. The Klingel House. My eyes could barely see for the tears that stung my sight of the news my son Ethan had ascended to the Almighty's light. The letter I held in my hand from your commander, I see, to tell me of your bravery so that others could be free. In early July of 1863, upon the battlefield of our North, Gettysburg, 'tis the name, so how you did go forth. The 3 days of such fighting, the slaughter I cannot grasp. So many gone like you, my son, I fear I shall collapse. But as I read the letter and heard of how you died, it is as if I can see you, my son, and be there at your side. So now I will take my breath and read the part of your pain, and left this earth a better man, of this I shall refrain. 'Twas on July the 4th, the holiday of our nation's birth, they found your body, my son. With your comrade next to you, God's will you see was done. It says here you were wounded and tried to take shelter, I see, to the Klingel farm under the porch, yet it was not meant to be. The owner came and found his farm littered with the dead, of 3 days of the din of battle where the nation bled. I see you, my son, under that porch as you tried to save your life, yet God had other plans for you and took you from that strife. There's no more to say just now. The letter, it ends with thanks for the sacrifice of so many, my Ethan in the ranks. This is the story of the Klingel House, which was involved on July 2nd, 1863. The family was warned the Union forces were coming, so they had to vacate their farm. When they came back on July 4th, quote, the farm was covered by the dead. Bodies lay all around the house. 2 were just inside the gate, and 2 others were under the porch, where they must have crawled for shelter before dying of their wounds. I have visited the Klingel House many times and stood upon that small porch. The Klingel House is the one place on this Gettysburg battlefield that calls me time and time again to visit. It's from there, it's as if the voice of this unknown woman comes to light to tell us of her son, his great sacrifice, and the pride she had in his death. There's a palpable sadness that surrounds this house, silent and quietly heartbreaking, yet brought to life by this unknown mother and son, bound together on the fields of a town called Gettysburg. I would like to conclude with the words of our great American poet Walt Whitman and the excerpt from The Million Dead, 1865. Here, he captures the essence of the nameless and the faceless of the Civil War. The Million Dead, 1865, Walt Whitman. The dead, the dead, the dead, our dead, for south or north, ours all, our young men, once so handsome and so joyous, taken from us, the son from the mother, the husband from the wife, the dear friend from the dear friend, and everywhere among these countless graves, we see, and ages yet may see, on monuments and gravestones, singly or in masses, the thousands or the tens of thousands, the significant word, unknown. As you leave here today and we commemorate the 160th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. I ask you to remember those with humility, those without a name or without a face, and think of them as you walk the fields, the hills, the valleys, the monuments of this remarkable town here on the 160th commemoration of a town called Gettysburg. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Did you enjoy it?
We'll see you, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We'll see you in the spring.
Oh, you bet you will. Thank you.
We'll talk to you over email.
Okay, you got it.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Roger.